pressed go live now, so any minute.
I have my phone on, so I'll see, or I should be seeing it.
I think we're live now.
Okay, it didn't update for me though.
Hello everyone.
Yep, now we're live. All right. Great.
Hi everyone. I hope everybody's safe wherever you guys are in the world in this moment. We are kicking off our regional Product Tank meetup with Ken Sandy, whom you should see already on the screen. He's gonna be our main speaker today, and myself from Product Tank Dubai, together with Stefan from Product Tank Bucharest, we're gonna throw some difficult question to Ken, and then we're gonna try to pick up to harvest the knowledge of an experienced product guy. So that was my short intro. Ken, Sandy, I would suggest let's spend another probably 5 minutes for people to gather, and then we can kick it off.
Yeah, I guess that'll be good. So during this time, Ken, do you want to tell us a bit about your experience, like in a nutshell? I mean, not super in detail.
No problem. Well, I mean, I'll just start by giving you some of the highlights. But I've been working in Silicon Valley. I'm actually live and work in San Francisco. I'm originally from Australia, where I'm actually right now. So I'm over in Australia for a little. This is actually my parents' place that I'm visiting for the weekend, or the end of the week. That's nice. Actually some relatives, some early pictures of them on the back road. So it's not my place. Yeah, I've worked for 25 years in product management in the Bay Area, and I fell into it very early in my life, and I really love it. It's just a great way of solving really interesting and difficult problems for the world, and doing that in using kind of technology. It's always been a big passion of my life. Typically, I've joined companies. I've worked a lot in VC companies, and so I've really seen a repeated kind of pattern of coming in, creating sometimes the first product management team, if not inheriting a kind of a younger or developing team, and really scaling that up as the company grows into to significant size. I've also worked in enterprise and consumer. I've worked in larger companies, smaller companies, so I've seen product management in very many flavors. More recently, I've worked in as head of product for some ed tech companies, Lynda and Masterclass among them. I also now work primarily as an executive consultant, so I will come and work with individual product leaders, coaching, or work with product teams to help them develop their systems and processes and operations.
Right.
And so there's a ton of work there. I also teach at UC Berkeley. I teach product management at UC Berkeley, which has been a great privilege of my time to help train up a new crops of product managers. And I also published a book, The Influential Product Manager, which is all about the challenging aspects of being a product manager. Is often to do with stakeholder management, navigating kind of the role of influence in throughout the product life cycle, and just how to actually engage and collaborate with your organization. And that book is available Amazon, many other locations. We've got a paperback, we've got a Kindle PDF version. So you definitely check it out if you're interested in learning some of the finer points of being like a really super effective product manager. I believe that influence is the ability to master that very tricky part of our role is often what separates a good product manager from a great product manager.
Awesome. So Influential Product Manager is the book's name.
The Influential Product Manager.
Awesome. Mihai, you were saying?
I like how you've ended from good product manager, how to make the step to great product manager. I think this is linked to, or actually it reminds me about a book that I've read recently, From Good to Great, which was an absolutely amazing lecture. And I like your association. We will post the link from the book, if I guess that's okay with you, right? If we post the link from the book. Yeah, and then also, you've mentioned about the UC Berkeley. Do they offer this course online nowadays?
It's still a closed classroom environment, but yes, we're online right now. So I'm teaching it from Australia, but we do not offer anything sort of open to like a broader audience. But what I have done is I've been doing a set of kind of webinars and lectures and kind of taking very many specific topics, including one that we're going to talk today about, product strategy. And I have an entire like kind of 1 hour long kind of breakdown of what a great product strategy looks like and the process to actually go through it. We're going to touch on some of those points today. Yeah. All of that material is available at influentialpm.com. So do check that out, and we'll include the link to that resource as well. And there's some templates in one section on the site, including templates to various parts of your world and skills development, lists of skills that you need, as well as templates you can use in your work, as well as sort of speaking webinars and recorded material that you are welcome to jump in. And I'm also very open to connecting to the industry or anywhere in the world. So please just reach out on LinkedIn. LinkedIn/in/Ken Sandy, all one word, KENSANDY. And you'll find me there, and feel free to connect. It takes me maybe a little while to like reply, so give me a little bit of time, but I'd love to answer any questions you have that you can't find sort of online.
I'll actually share your profile right here in the chat.
Thank you.
So in the meantime, I guess we can start, let's say, in about 2-3 minutes. In the meantime, I'll just want to run a very quick exercise. We have 80 people watching right now, and just to bring a little bit of context about the event. So let's say before COVID hit, we were doing the events offline, and then with the COVID, we have to delete all the physical borders, and that's how we got the idea of building this regional product tongue meetup, which is exclusively online. And we have 8 chapters who've been supporting this initiative. And if you guys just want to throw a line of where you're watching us today, that will help us understand, how mixed this whole setup is going to be. And then even if we stick to the myself, Ken, and Stefan, I am based in Dubai. Stefan is in Bucharest, and Ken, you are in Australia. Ken, what time is it on in your end?
You don't want to know.
Okay, I guess it's somewhere in the middle of the night. So thanks for doing the effort there.
We're sorry for that, Ken.
That's okay. I don't mind at all. I mean, I love talking to the folks all around the world, and being product manager, one of the things you learn is, particularly if you're a global product manager, you might have team members all around the world. You've got to get pretty used to it. You got to get your sleep too. So it's just about discipline.
Okay, so we have India, we have Romania, Timișoara actually.
Been there.
You've been there, yeah.
Yeah.
Ken spent some time in Romania. He told me this story. You were actually, not really backpacking, right? But
I was backpacking. Yes.
You were backpacking. All right. So he backpacked through whole Europe, a lot more than I did anyway. And he passed through Timișoara apparently.
Yeah, actually, right through Romania. I had a lovely time. Beautiful.
That's awesome. We have Helsinki, we have Sofia, we have Cluj-Napoca, You can check, which ones did you visit? Cluj-Napoca, Helsinki, Sofia. There we go. Bucharest.
Okay.
So
Bucharest, yes.
Valencia too. Moscow
Not Moscow.
and Dubai.
Great stuff. I'd be curious to know if we have anybody from Iran. We've put together a partnership with Star, an incubator from Iran. So if we have anybody from Iran, just drop a quick sentence there. Would be more than happy to hear about you. Okay, so should we start slowly with our actual conversations for today?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, let's jump in.
Okay, Ken, you're
ready.
ready, right? Okay, perfect. So we're going to start with product strategy, and as I shared on my LinkedIn announcement on when I've shared the fact that we're going to have this meetup, I've seen Ken talking about product strategy, and it actually had a very big impact on the effort that I've done on building a product strategy for one of my startups recently. So then here we are talking live about this. And to start with the first question, can you put us in your context? I mean, how do you define the product strategy in a nutshell? If you can tell us a little bit about that.
Right. Well, let me start off by saying that I think we make it way too complicated. So generally, product strategy is something that feels very scary, feels like it's going to be a big, massive, long effort, and it tends to be a little bit overwhelming. We think of presenting a tight kind of like presentation pitch with all the data to our stakeholders and expect that's kind of what a strategy is. So I'll have a bit of a counterpoint on what I think a strategy really is, to put it in context a little bit. I'll give it a couple of angles that you can kind of think about it that might help reframe what product strategy is for you and how I interpret it, or what I believe is an effective approach to look at with product strategy. The first is it really has two things in it, product strategy. The first is it's got a transparent, shared, and commonly understood. And by commonly understood, I mean like you and your team and stakeholders all agree on a class of market problems, target customers, and desired outcomes. That's the first aspect of that. That you have that collective shared point of view about what it is that you believe about the market, your customers, and what you're ultimately trying to achieve from an outcome perspective. And then the second part of that is the set of actions or milestones or focus points or ways of working, how you're actually wanting to get there, the set of actions you intend to take. And any good strategy is basically a perspective of your plan for the future, how you're actually going to get to some objective. So that's all it really is. If you can articulate, now those things are not easy to articulate, but if you can articulate some shared perspective around the market and the action, the desired outcomes and the actions that you want to take to get there. So it's a statement of intent. It's not a plan.
Okay.
Right? The details of your product strategy rarely survive first contact, because when you actually start implementing whatever you're thinking of doing in the market, you learn a whole lot more. The high level should stay roughly the same, but the details of the plan will change. And so that has some important implications for thinking about like what you're actually trying to put together is something that is effectively a hypothesis. If you can build a hypothesis out based on the best available information you have, yes, you need to go and do some research, but it doesn't require 6 weeks to put together a product strategy. What is your current understanding and perspective, and then build a strategy around that, and then look, instead of having something that guides you so much as it's a hypothesis that you can implement, you iterate, test and iterate. So you're looking to learn whether or not your product strategy is correct by
Right.
putting it into action and iterating around that. And that's how you get into a learning cycle. So you almost treat your product strategy like you would your product. Try to iterate, try to learn in the market. I'll pause there and let any questions. That's my first perspective I'd like to share, and then I've got a couple more.
Okay.
So they pretty much go in the tandem, your product strategy with your actual with the actual
Product.
product that you put in the with the actual product that you put in the market.
You still need to do your product strategy. No, it's in tandem. Yeah, and that's not a bad way of thinking about it. Your product strategy needs to be something you don't necessarily iterate every week on, right? It should be something that you can build out. But the whole point of my message is yes, by putting your product out into the world, you are testing effectively the hypothesis of your product strategy, and you want to come back and actually iterate and learn. So you're always looking to refine something with learning, both your product and your statement of intent.
So how often should you visit your product strategy to make sure that these two are in tandem, your product strategy with your product?
Yeah, I often get this question, and like I hear various companies, and I think it might be a little bit situational, but first of all, I'm going to say that you've got to fit in with whatever strategic planning process that you might have at your company. So the intent is not to replace that. It's actually to approach whatever you're being asked to do with maybe a different set of tools, and also to sort of get a bit of a cycle going for yourself. Even if your company, say, has an annual strategic process, that doesn't feel like fast enough to me, particularly if you're in a earlier stage company or even a product in a more mature company that's evolving quickly. So I like the idea of looking at your product strategy and sort of honing a little bit. You don't throw it out, you iterate, right? So it's not about redoing it, but touching it, refreshing it, reflecting on it, adding learnings should probably be about quarterly.
Right. And I think I actually enjoy going a bit into operational. When you review the strategy, should you be bringing together like other stakeholders within the company that,
That's an interesting question. Let me actually talk a little bit about that.
All right.
So one of the other this is the other framing that I would like to introduce that I think product managers get wrong. And that product strategy is not actually necessarily just a deliverable. It's not an exercise that you go off and crunch a bunch of data and come back with an answer. The key to it is there's 3 C's that I like to think about that is great product strategy, and they achieve these goals. The first is it's collaborative. So to get that transparent, shared, and commonly understood market perspective requires you to involve a number of people in that. Your stakeholders, your team, external points of view are useful. Talking to even your customers. Obviously, you don't ask them what your strategy should be, but you use that data. Yeah. So the collaboration is very, very important for 2 reasons. The first is you actually get a better set of data, particularly if it's hard to come by. You actually force alignment. Don't think you're going for consensus. That's not one of the C words, right? It's not consensus, because that's almost impossible. But you're just trying to get alignment around this is our statement of intent. Do we agree on that? So if you leave your product strategy process with good collaboration and good alignment, you have a lot of buy-in. You have a more robust sort of answer and a much higher likelihood that it's going to stick. So that's one aspect. The other 2 C's, by the way, are context and clarity, and they're related in many ways to collaboration. The context is important because the purpose of a product strategy is not actually to say this is our plan of attack and we're going to this is how we're going to do it necessarily, in as much that it has the context around the problem, the customer, the value proposition, the steps we believe to get there, so you can actually provide that context to your team. So any new team member, for example, can quickly come up to speed and understand what is it that we're trying to achieve. They have all access to the same data, so you can quickly get people the same kind of information to draw draw the same conclusions with. And then clarity is simplicity. And so you aren't smart by putting together a product strategy that is 30 pages long with lots and lots of details. That's not clarity. Simplicity and clarity comes from doing the hard work to focus in on what really matters. And so in my version of a product strategy, it's 5 steps with relatively little data and relatively little information at each step. There's obviously double clicks into that you want to be able to get people to see the raw information, the same kind of backgrounds, market research, whatever you've got. But at the end of the day, zoomed out, it's relatively straightforward in terms of a clarity of its intent, the customer, your themes, and those things feed directly into your roadmap.
Right. And I do have a question which I really want to address, but I also want to mention that, guys, if you have any questions, if you find something very interesting and you want to change a little bit the perspective or go deeper, add some more, then do post a comment and we can take comments or questions on the fly. So Ken, my question would be, how would the product strategy influence my job as a product manager on my day-to-day basis?
The first thing is by doing it well, collaboratively, you will have a much more efficient team interactions, because you're going to have that shared context. The second thing that it helps you do is be a little stronger, a little bit more purposeful in the reasons why you are saying no to something with your stakeholders, because you can put that in the framework and say, look, I'm really struggling to see where this fits. Or alternatively, it means that you get out ahead of them a little bit, and you're able to speak to the things you're going to be focused on instead. So that's 2 discrete ways it helps you. A third way that it helps you is that it does actually help structure your consumer research. So by defining the problem, the value props, the clarity of the customer, it's kind of that simple. If once you actually get that clarity, you can say, okay, how do I test and validate? How do I interview to understand and develop empathy? The fourth way is that the kinds of the strategic pillars, if you will, what I call strategic pillars. These are the key core competencies that your product needs to be exceptionally good at. These are the things that make the difference. There shouldn't be any more than like 3 or so of those. They become your anchor points for your roadmap. They allow you to say, these are the things that we need to invest in the most. It doesn't mean there's going to be dozens of other things that you want to try to do, but they're strategically the things that you want to get really good at. And so they become a direct link into kind of your roadmap or your plan. Those themes, I mean, there are examples online if you watch the webinar, but sort of those themes are often differentiators, or they might be parts of the customer funnel that you need to really master. There are different ways you can kind of articulate them, but they're really ultimately the things that matter and therefore should feature in your roadmap. And what often happens is you get this notion of have a product strategy. It's this long, big thing. It gets done, and then there's a separate process by which there's some kind of delivery roadmap comes up, and that's just got a list of features, try to lay it out on a timeline, and there's a big disconnect between what's actually being delivered and what we think is important. And that's really a problem. And so that's why a simple iterative product strategy allows you to constantly kind of be checking that and say, what am I really making the progress that I think, or have I been so distracted this last quarter by all these incoming like requests that I'm not actually making that progress, and how do I escalate that? That's the kinds of things that it allows you to do.
I just want to make a quick association on these three key elements that should differentiate your product. Is this would having the Kano structure help you find the delighters, which can be at the end of the day the key feature that differentiates yourself from your competitors?
So I use a couple of different techniques to arrive at that. Your viewership will want to do a little bit of their own research here, but one of the simplest ways is a feature to benefits to value prop map. So you might have a product in market already with a lot of features, or you might have a stakeholder group who are asking you for a lot of features. You might have a lot of feature ideas yourself. Challenge yourself to group them. There's a couple of different techniques you can do that, but essentially imagine you've got like them on Post-its and you're trying to group them into similar things that articulate benefits. So for example, and I'm going to pull something up in front of me to be able to like just refer to it. Say you have a service that is delivering a organic produce. Okay, so say you've got a home delivery, food delivery services doing organic produce, and part of the features of the produce package or the subscription that you have is it promises organic food. Well, organic is not a value prop or a benefit. It's actually a feature. And people go, wait, is that? Well, actually, yes, of course. Organic food is a property of the food for some end. When you realize that, you're okay, what are all my features? Organic, in season, variety, fresh supply, home delivered, eco-friendly packaging. Now, there are 5 features of that service I just talked about. Well, if you go up to the level of the benefit, what that really means is, well, fewer store visits, less waste, always fresh, healthy, and maybe pesticide free actually is the benefit. And then you go one more step further and start gathering those things together, and you're like, well, really the 2 things that really matter are healthy, sustainable lifestyle for my family. That's the value prop. And a convenient access to a source of fresh greens. Mm-hmm. Right. So what I've done is I've got these features. I've gone up the chain to sort of try to get to the things that really matter to my customer. Now, if I now double click on those 2 big things, I want to be healthy for my family, and I want a convenient access to greens. I can now go back down again, and I can probably find a lot of different additional features and aspects. And I can also see all the stuff that I'm being asked for that isn't actually helping me deliver against that value proposition. And I can challenge that. So that's one tool that I like to use. In terms of differentiators, have a little bit of research on the Kano method. The Kano method is a fairly simple framework. Takes a little bit of sort of pulling yourself through it, but what it does is effectively bucket all of the things that you could be doing into what are called basic needs, performance needs, and delighters. And basic needs are often where we end up spending a lot of our time. It's fixing bugs, scalability. It might be some features that we could always improve, but they're not really adding to the core value prop, but people maybe complain about them a lot. The reality of basic needs is at some point you overinvest in those and you're no longer impacting your customer satisfaction. Like they're good enough. They're just good enough. And your goal is to get good enough at that. And so we often spend a lot of time obsessing about these things. What really matters actually are the performance needs and the delighters, and trying to sit down and actually figure out performance needs and delighters will often lead to the same kind of like things that I just talked about that a feature map will do in terms of your core competencies you need to be very good at. So I'll give you a little bit more. Performance needs pretty straightforward. It's the stuff that users and customers already know they need more of. And improving them tends to improve customer satisfaction fairly linearly. So if for a CPU processor, it's more speed, right? For a car, it's more mileage. For delighters, they're actually the things that you kind of suspect, but your customers are not necessarily asking for them. And it's the hard work of product management, because if your customer's asking for them, it's probably not going to be a delighter, it's probably a performance need. So therefore, you have to go to the trouble of thinking what and observing your customers and saying, what problems do they have? And what aren't they asking for? And can I solve whatever they are asking for in a completely different way to delight them? And the interesting thing about delighters is they're not asking for them, but when you bring it, you get exponential improvement in your customer satisfaction. And you outpay. So what do you need to do? You need to make sure that your core competencies include some delighters, could just be one, and some performance needs. And they're the things that you really, really focus on in your roadmap. And it also says it's not good enough to build a product purely based on what you know are performance needs, what you know customers are just asking for. You actually have to think, how can I delight them? And that's a very interesting hard principle for some product managers and certainly some companies to get over, particularly those that are a little bit more sales driven. Right. So using this particular framework helps you broach the subject, helps you start having that dialogue. Using the more iterative product strategy allows you to start kind of like edging into it and getting people a little bit more comfortable that you're going to take some bets because you believe that you can do something truly wonderful for your customers that's delighting. That's why I like these techniques, is they're simple, iterative, and allow you to really focus on the collaboration and introducing the concepts. So they're, just to answer your question, they're the two tools that I like to use. I know that was a very long answer, but I felt that was worth it.
That's great, because the next question would have been actually, besides these two tools and frameworks that you presented, would you list a couple more that we should be, like a homework, like, guys, in order to improve your, product strategy abilities, look into these? And this is a question from Fabius, actually. But now that already started answering, let's give the audience something to study at home.
Okay, that's great. So I think those two are really, really great starting place. I like. Look, there's a lot of these out there. So one thing that's exceptionally valuable, that has been exceptionally valuable for me, again, it takes a little bit of mastering it, practice, but it's the customer journey framework. You know what this looks like when you have kind of a scenario. You describe the scenario that your customer's facing, and then they typically go through a number of steps. And this is not about your product. This is not the flow of your product or even how you're solving it today. It's, I've got this scenario, this problem to solve. What are the steps that the customers need to take? Perhaps using alternatives, or perhaps using what you do today, or perhaps doing what they do today. And what are all the steps? And what you're looking for are the user actions, the things that they're trying to achieve at every step. So you break that down. What are the touch points that you and others potentially have with them to help them along their way? And then what is their emotional state? And what is the rating of success against that?
Why do we care about the emotional state?
Because that's where customers, we think maybe that products just solve problems through utility, achieving some kind of goal. And that is very important. You don't get very far without that. But how you do it and how the user leaves using your product feeling is important too. And that has a massive impact on their advocacy in particular. So whether or not they recommend it to others, or whether or not they they come back and use it on an ongoing basis because it wasn't painful. So you might achieve the goal. So you're looking for where are the pain points, basically. Emotionally, I'm not very happy, or I failed to achieve my goal. So you can literally imagine that kind of be like traffic lights. Red, green is, yes, I'm happy and I achieved my goal. Yellow is, I achieved my goal, I'm not very happy. Red is, this was really, really difficult. I don't think I'd come back and use it again. And black is abject failure. Right? So that's important, because what by highlighting those things, you start seeing parts of the customer journey that you can truly differentiate on, because that black and red and some of the yellows are where the current solutions are doing a poor job. And you can say, look, we could really, it also helps you stop thinking that you need to only build the whole product first. You know, maybe I can take this slice and solve this part of the customer journey in solving this problem, and kind of go from there. So it actually helps with kind of MVPs, if you will. So that's another tool that I love. Go look that up. What it allows you to do is to pinpoint specific areas in the customer journey that you can focus on.
How is it called? Ken, sorry.
It comes under various names, but a customer journey or a consumer journey. And you'll know it because you'll see kind of a flow chart with sort of those things underneath it: the user actions, the touch points, the emotional point, the pain points. So the utility pain points and the emotional pain points. And then sometimes there'll be like, that's where you can kind of put post-it notes of your possible solutions.
Right.
So that might be a last layer, if you will.
Yeah, actually, it's being shown in this last comment from Dragos Gavrilescu. Thumbs up for that. Ken, we have a question which I really want to run it with you. How do you validate that your product strategy is good while you're actually running the product?
Well, to evaluate where it's really good, a big part of the product strategy is to define several layers of metrics and effectively articulate those well in advance of actually trying to actually do anything. So you're honest with yourself about what your metrics are. And we've had a lot. I mean, it's actually interesting because I think we're all used to North Star metrics. That's one of them. Interestingly, like, I still ask so many product managers, what is your North Star metric? And I get one of two things. One is, oh, it's revenue. Okay, not very helpful, to be honest. How does it change what you do? And other times I get blank stares. Yeah, I've heard about them. I just don't have that. North Star metrics really should anchor you ultimately in your desired way that you're going to measure success. And it's not just revenue. It's likely to be something a little bit more inspiring than that. It's something that's likely to touch on what kind of behaviors show that customers are getting value out of my product. That's getting more interesting. So I'm working with a company right now at the moment, and we've been talking a lot about CAC to LTV ratio, which I won't go into to bore you, but it's a financial metric on sort of the unit economics of the product. And it's very valid to have that as a metric. Totally uninspiring, right? So as we've gone and thought about like what we're really trying to achieve, it's an ed tech product, is we're trying to achieve learning outcomes. But that is very hard to also measure. Like, you've got to wait 4 years to figure out whether they got a job or not. Okay, that's not helpful. So what we've really anchored around is this idea that if we create a platform that allows for student-to-student interactions and student-to-instructor interactions, so the more interactions they have, we've definitely seen the more interactions they have, doesn't matter what quality they are, doesn't matter what technology is used, it doesn't matter whether it's a student-to-student or instructor-to-student, any kind of interactions leads to better outcomes. So what's the North Star metric? We're just going to focus on getting more and more interactions per student. We could talk about retention. We could talk about like repeat visits. But by focusing on that, it becomes very tangible, because now we can say, first of all, we can absolutely measure that. Secondly, so it's a smart metric. The secondly is it allows us to really brainstorm and think about How do we get them to interact more? How do we get them to talk about more? And it doesn't prescribe like how that has to happen or even what the conversation's about. So it allows us to experiment. And that's the North Star metric that I'm kind of talking about. Your next level, by the way, are your more KPIs. And these would be shorter term leading metrics, the things that should correlate or cause your longer term or your North Star metric to go up. So your North Star metric might be a little bit lagging, might take some time to measure it. A good example might be you might look for a good indicator of advocacy is NPS, right? It might take some time to actually figure out whether or not your users are improving or are recommending your product and actually see kind of growth that way. But you know that if they're scoring it highly, it's not my favorite metric, by the way, but if you're scoring it highly, that's a good indicator. So these secondary indicators help you articulate what else about the product you want to see going up. And then the third level is counter or balancing metrics. And these are the things that you do not want to affect. I'll give you a case in point. One of my team's product areas that they had a strategy about was largely the web experience, where users would come in, learn more about the product, and purchase the product. And fairly obvious, their North Star was kind of conversion. I actually pushed it a little bit to sort of first-time activation, which is very important because it really talks about the first point of value. That was their North Star metric. And so they came up with a whole lot of different things in their plans, and they tried out an experiment. They did a lot of A/B testing without the counter metric of, yes, you can improve first-time activation, but you can also not cause retention to decline.
Yeah.
Right? Meant that they couldn't just take the easy stuff to kind of like get people to start using the product. Now, this is very obvious, right, when you think about it, but often just so overlooked. And actually, we narrowed it down to first month retention. So they could still test quickly enough, but they could not have that first month retention dip because of something that they did. And so through cohorting, you could figure that out. That's an example of a counter metric. That's how I would set up a good product strategy: is North Star metric, inspiring, customer-oriented, leading metrics that might be a little bit more business, a little bit more like tangibly measured, something you can actually see quickly, and then some counter metrics that you don't want to affect negatively.
Right. So health metrics are definitely recommended. I know lots of people who ignore health metrics at all.
I want to ask. It might sound silly, but when is the best moment to build your product strategy? Let's say you have this idea. You have an idea of a startup, which I think it's not necessarily an aha moment. It might come to you in a couple of weeks' time, months' time. You are sleeping on the idea, and then you finally decide, okay, you know what? I'm gonna either quit my job and start my own startup, or I'm gonna dedicate a lot of my free time to building the startup. So you're there, you're ready to take off. When do you do your product strategy? When would be the best moment?
To start it? It's a very interesting question, because product strategy has a potential to not be helpful.
Okay.
Particularly early on. And so the way that I characterize that when I'm talking to companies about this, or product managers about this, is there is a phase of your product development where you understand a little bit about the market, but not a lot, and you don't really have a product yet, but you're sort of starting to build it, and you have your business and organization, and that's not established yet. And those three things are kind of a Venn diagram. Mm-hmm. And in the middle is actually product strategy. When you bring the what are we trying to achieve as a business? What are we capable of doing? then the product would be, what are the benefits, what are the unique things that we can build that solve the problem, and of course the understanding of the market environment, the users, the customers, the competitive landscape. That's all information that goes in, and in the middle you sort of like figure out, okay, this is our product strategy. But the problem is very, very early on, you actually don't have a lot of overlap. You may not even have a business yet. You may not have a team in place, right? So the way that I like to think about it is, well, what you're doing really is to try to find the beginning of the overlap, and the beginning of the overlap, particularly the market, like understanding the market and understanding the problems that your potential customers are having, and your product. That's product market fit.
Right.
And so it's better early on, I think, to be less worried about a product strategy, particularly one that focuses on growth, and instead seek product market fit through experimentation by understanding the problems and seeing what kind of sticks, what doesn't stick. And so being very experimental. So your product strategy is kind of, we're going to experiment our way into the problem space. Now, I could also argue you could still have a product strategy. It just means you have to iterate it much, much faster.
Yeah, this is what I wanted to.
Much less information.
This is what I wanted to say, that basically until you find your product market fit, your product strategy, it's going to be a very dynamic, and it should ideally change with each and every new experiment or new iteration. Okay, so basically when you find your product market fit, more or less you know what you're aiming for, you know what you're focusing on. So that's the moment when let's say your idea gets a little bit more mature and you know your way. You start your growing season, so that's when you're bringing your product strategy in place.
Yeah, I think that's the case. It's a little fuzzy, but I think that's exactly a great way to say it, to think about it, for sure. Put it this way: do not lock behind a product strategy that you believe with very little information, and then forget to actually experiment into finding product market fit because you believe you have a product strategy. That's the thing I'm trying to avoid.
Okay,
got it. And since we're discussing this, and we just said earlier that you have to experiment a lot, to move around a lot, to keep yourself agile, dynamic, until you build a concrete product strategy. My next question would go towards, again, operational. I like the operational questions, and there's this role, product operations, right?
Yeah.
And I frankly just heard about it like super recently, and I know our colleagues from Valencia and from Madrid told us that they actually have within their companies a couple of product operations specialists. But with the other chapters I discussed, not many heard about it. What's up? Where did it come from? What's the required skill set? What should be expected?
Yeah, exactly. It is an interesting new trend, if you will. I'm gonna probably say it's not so new, but I'll explain why. Right. But I mean, it is a specialization within product management, and I think the best product ops people are. I'll sort of answer this in a couple of different ways. Best product ops people, think people that either aspire to become PMs as a way of really learning the ropes and mastering what it takes to be a product manager, or very experienced product managers who want a much more holistic role and kind of master all aspects of the product and have a big outsized impact on their organizations by being able to touch far more touch points in their own product. So those two types of people, I think, I've seen in product ops roles. Basically what's driving it is product management has become more strategic in nature as our tools have gotten better, as we've been pushed to contextualize and understand problems at the next levels, where we're relying more and more on our kind of engineering counterparts to define the details of the solution. So managing delivery, hopefully, is less of like the things we spend. We certainly shouldn't be spending 100% of our time on. Maybe it's 30, 40%. I know it differs in different companies, but pushing us to be more strategic requires, in addition, we're kind of getting overwhelmed with data because, like, with all the, like, I think I saw a stat that like 80% of data ever created was created in the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like we're personally, there's all these data points. There's also a whole lot more expectations in terms of all the different stakeholders we're expected to align and get on board. We're expected to track, prioritize, and deliver against specific outcomes. So we're taking on data analytics as well.
Yeah.
And on top of that, we have a lot of different go-to-market activities that we need to be thinking about more. How do we empower sales and support, for example, to truly make the product a success? We used to do that pretty poorly. And it's a generalization. But I'm also going to point out that product has become an elevated function in many ways in its own right. It used to be like, oh, it should belong in engineering or marketing. But it's actually kind of being elevated to its own thing. Perhaps that part of this is we talk a lot more of product-driven companies,
Right.
customer-centric companies that are thinking about like the product, solving the problem, and kind of marketing itself, selling itself. Right? There's some companies very much designed around it. Others are kind of aspirationally. And perhaps we're taking on some aspects that we wouldn't have done before. Some aspects of thinking about the acquisition funnel that might have belonged in marketing before. Mm-hmm. Or some aspects of sales, like how do you articulate the value proposition and kind of sell, help sell the product. And marketing and sales ops have been around forever. Like they're basically defined as building a foundation for excellence by reinforcing the strategy, whether it be marketing, sales, or product strategy, with metrics, infrastructure, tools, processes, best practices, and budgeting and reporting. So that's essentially what marketing ops was defined as, and product ops has just changed the word product. It's basically the same thing. So this evolution has sort of driven it, and we've realized we've got many more like parts of our role that we need to like coordinate, and that's where I think the ops function has kind of come from, with that purpose to really run that operational element of product, specifically in the things that I just talked about: the facilitation, the repeatable practices, the processes, the holding accountable the product managers to following that, making sure they don't forget things, choosing and operating and managing the tool set that's run and the templates that have run, as well as facilitating the stakeholder outreach part of the process. I think it's a pretty interesting job. It's an interesting carve out. I think it takes a particular type of person who really loves driving impact through process and leverage.
Right. So would you consider it to be like a split between two different personalities, where one of them is more inclined to strategy and the product operation is more inclined to operational, right? Actually, delivering.
Yeah, what? Not delivering. I don't think product ops are responsible for delivering. If you're thinking delivering product, I think they're responsible ultimately. I'll give you one or two ways to think about it. I think product ops are responsible for the efficient and accurate running of the product organization to ensure that it actually has a much higher chance of avoiding the opportunity cost of bad decisions. Mm-hmm. So their real value, there's two ways to think about the value. First of all, they make things more efficient. Okay, well, I can imagine making, say, a 10-person team, rather than hiring my next product manager to sort of fill some gap. It might be more efficient to hire a product ops person to make the existing 10 a lot more efficient. If I get them 10% more efficient, I get my money back. But that only is half the puzzle. The avoidance, the opportunity cost is often the much bigger opportunity. By ensuring a robust and rigorous process is followed, so when something is decided, prioritized to be done to get into the delivery function, that it is the right thing. And that's where I think product ops can add a lot of value, by making sure that there's real rigor behind whatever ends up getting implemented. Now, That doesn't mean that they're heavy on process, and I want to be very cautious here that they're not processy people in like they're project managers who like kind of run around trying to slow everyone down with overhead and bureaucracy. It's not that. It's pinpointing the biggest possible opportunity to allow us to make faster, quicker, more accurate decisions to build the right thing for our customers and business. That's where I think the real value lies. So do you go strategy or operations? Probably that's one way you can think about it. I think if you are a strategic person, but also very organized, very good at sort of thinking about like how to do things, if you've practiced the best practices and you want to scale your best practices out to other organizations or other parts of the organization, it's a great role for you. Doesn't mean you are now suddenly operational. It's a very strategic role in that you're making sure that the right stuff is actually being built, and you're enforcing things such as good prioritization, which is often done very poorly.
Right.
How much closer is a product operations to a project manager in the traditional way?
Yeah. I was trying to think through this a little bit because I've actually kind of we say it's a new role, and in actuality, I think I've had product operations people in my team. I just didn't call them that.
Right.
So 8 years ago, I had a team member who was my chief of staff, right? Mm-hmm. Product chief of staff, and he facilitated a lot of the processes, including, by the way, my strategic planning process.
Right.
I've had product analysts on my team, and they facilitated the digestion of data coming out of the data analytics team into insights, and sort of made sure that the right insights were landing in the right places and we weren't missing things. It was almost like, yes, they had a foot in data analytics, but they had a foot in product thinking. Mm-hmm. And they were able to translate not just here's all the data, but what are the insights that are going to make my team more powerful, more effective. That's a product operations like line item on the job description these days. I had a full person doing that, and I've definitely had program managers, project managers, not as frequently, but this notion of program managers is that they're very cross-functional, and that they're trying to coordinate go-to-market activities with other teams, not just sort of manage engineering or manage a slice of the delivery process. So they're actually thinking about like, how do I, particularly got a complex organization. And so I've had program managers in my team, not many, like a few, for massively dependent and complex projects. They are fantastic, and yet they were part of the product team. They understood the product goals, and they felt very much aligned with and working towards those goals. So I think ops have been around in different flavors. We're just more formalizing the role now, and it will evolve. What I don't want to do, what I would encourage anyone who's thinking of putting an operations role in their team, do not think that they're there just to fix the process. I think you actually want them to own the outcome and figure out how to measure it. Frankly, better, quicker, more accurate decisions. So we're building the right thing. How do you try to get them to really own that? So they're not just seen as operating a bureaucracy, but actually there's real value there because they're avoiding that risk of making poor decisions and spending a lot of time building something that no one wants.
So
I think that's Stefan, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just trying to slip into the Q&A session,
Yes.
Officially. Although I've been picking questions from the public anyway, and we have Alexandro asking, which is quite related to what we're discussing now. So what should tech companies be aware before hiring a product manager, right? Or I think where we could understand, like, when is the good opportunity to hire a product manager? When do you decide it's a good opportunity to hire a product manager?
And also just want a quick gap. We encourage other participants to throw in their questions because, at this point, we want to, do the QA and then mix everybody's questions into the scenario. So feel free to add your question there and we'll pick it up.
Yeah.
Should I answer quickly the question on the screen? Is product ops equal with product manager?
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, I forgot to highlight because this was my initial question. So now this is the
no
question.
problem. I wouldn't mind actually just speaking to that, and then I'll directly talk to Alexandra's question.
Okay.
Sure.
Because this is an important aspect, is that they are absolutely equal. I actually recommend that if you're going to have product ops, they report to the head of product and not somewhere else in the organization. The reason why product ops actually has to be equal is they need to be empowered to hold the product management organization at large, even experienced senior product managers, accountable to actually adhering to the operational practices of the department. And so whenever I've had product ops like people, I've tried to actually make them part of my direct reports, at least the lead of that team, although you don't usually have a lot of them. So they are put in a position where they really can actually hold accountable. Even if they're more junior people in their careers, they need to be able to go to a product manager and say, you need to be doing this. So that's an aspect that I didn't touch on. I think it's very important. They shouldn't be seen to be sort of some kind of lackey of the group that runs around trying to make people like do stuff. They've got to have real teeth. It's not an enjoyable role otherwise. Do you want to put back up the question?
Yeah, sure.
What should founders of tech companies beware when building products before being able to bring in their team a PM? So I'll interpret that question of like when to hire your first PM, maybe as a founder. It's a great question. There are tons of amazing Medium articles on this. A lot of founders have really made mistakes here and they've struggled, right? One of my counterparts at Berkeley, Basani, she put together a really nice little flow chart. Go look for that online because it actually breaks down the decision making. But essentially, I'll see if I can, I'll try to draw upon sort of my experience without having that in front of me because it was beautifully structured.
Could you tell us the name again?
Yes. Well, let me actually promise to follow up maybe with a link in the YouTube.
Yeah, sure.
It'll take me some time to actually find it online.
Yeah,
so I'll promise to follow up with that one. So essentially, first of all, founders need to be aware of what's working well and what's not working well in their company. Now, if it's working well, right, don't touch it. If whatever you've got figured out, let's just keep on doing that until it's needed. What's not working well is often product, but it doesn't look like product. And so the first thing you got to ask yourself is, I have a problem. Usually it's characterized of, I keep on launching lots of products that are, or features that aren't doing anything. I'm a feature factory. Or it might be, we can't deliver anything. We just keep on building and we never seem to ship anything, right? So what I've often found is that's actually not an engineering problem. It's an upstream problem around prioritization, thoughtfulness in terms of requirements and definition and scoping it out, and an empathetic understanding of the problem and the customer. So if you've got a delivery issue, chances are you might want to look at upstream a product, and that might be your first indication that you might want to bring in your first sort of PMs to start operating and working. The second big question you have to ask yourself is, you're the founder. Are you prepared to let go yet? Right?
Good one.
And there's nothing worse than a skilled product manager coming in and being micromanaged and being told what to build by a founder who has a very clear vision, but for some reason can't articulate it or can't share it, or has such a clear vision, but they've thought it through. They are 2 years ahead of that product manager in terms of thinking through what should be built, and they just operate that way. You're going to lose that person very quickly again. So are you prepared to let go? And if the answer is usually one of three things, no, then don't change anything. Be honest. If you're not prepared to step back, Don't do it yet. Number two, maybe, in which case I recommend that you hire a more junior first product manager, maybe a senior product manager who wants to have their first director of product management role. Someone that you can be far more constrained, far more directive at. That's a good mix. And if the answer is yes, then you can get ahead of product.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing is your organization culturally and ready for it? Are you able to bring somebody in who's going to be able to kind of operate with engineering and sales and others, and are you going to be able to like put that person into position of success? So basically, have you figured out exactly how to set them up for success? Mm-hmm. And if you haven't got product market fit and you're not even sure what the rest of the company is doing yet, then maybe you're not setting them up for success. Or if you've basically built out like a 12-person engineering team, you expect one product manager to suddenly like change the way they've been working for like, a year or so, that's going to be very, very hard. So you have to truly look at it and say, am I able to spend the cycles to change the way we all work to enable that person to be successful? And if the answer is no, I don't have time for that, I just want to hire someone and shove them in there, then you're probably not ready either.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, so we have theoretically 5 minutes, over.
Really?
Time flies.
If by theoretically you mean can we overrun, I no problem my end. I understand that people might need to drop off, but I'm actually happy to talk for a little longer.
I would like to ask the audience if they have one other question that we should ask Ken. And maybe you can spend the next 5 minutes answering that question. So let's see if somebody has the courage to pop up on the question. It's a good opportunity to ask someone like Ken, like his opinion on something. Alex, I think, or I hope we answered your question, Alexandru Agatine, regarding what should you be aware when hiring a product manager. I think Ken had amazing insights regarding whether you're ready for it or not, from a psychological standpoint mostly. And we have Babita actually asking right now, I'm currently placed as product owner with the client I am working with. So we don't have a project manager. We have a product owner, tech lead and developers, and it's good so far. However, our sales teams say it's difficult to make organization understand the concept of product management. They look for and prefer project manager / business analyst combo. Thoughts? Okay, let me synthesize that. So, right.
So basically, it sounds like an environment where you might have a team that's used to operating in a certain way with like product owners or project managers. Essentially, they're looking for a service organization, one that's going to take orders of the features that their customers are asking of them, or they think will solve the customer problem, or worse, they think but don't know is going to land some kind of deal. And you have to understand the incentives behind that, right? Of course, a sales organization that is incented correctly through commission by selling product, and the left unconstrained, they're going to, of course, want an organization that can effectively do what's needed to make that an easier job. It makes total sense. And so many organizations end up in this kind of product managers are the last to arrive. I've had engineers, marketing, and sales. They know how to work with each other. They're busy kind of, maybe there's a good relationship, but it's still fairly much like, here's the list of things that we need to, our customers are telling us that we need. And some organizations are always going to work that way. And I probably wouldn't join one, but, you can be a product manager there. It's just you may not be having as much influence over the strategic component of your role, but you'll learn, and it's not a bad, for a while.
But so the product manager comes on board only when the damage happens, and
that's usually what happens. Is like the engineers feel like they're a feature factory. There's low morale. They're quitting. Sales is frustrated because nothing ever gets delivered because there's always commitments and always like changing of priorities. It's not great, and I'm generalizing because there are definitely high functioning companies that may not work the way I would want them to work, but they're high functioning, so leave them alone, fine. But generally that's what happens, and it's unfair to throw a product manager into that because it's like you can't fix the company culture and ways of working that's established.
Yeah.
So what generally is happening there is because of the desire to be able to, I need these features, hand it over to you, go build those features. They kind of want that person who's more just project manager do the bidding. So this is really difficult. Changing this behavior requires a lot of work over time. It usually starts with hiring a product leader with an equal seat at the table. And that leader, first of all, does not try to change the way things are working, but starts introducing the value of strategic product management and starts talking through how things could be different if we gave it a shot. And when you get enough stakeholders kind of on board with that, pick one thing and prove that it works. Pilot something. Don't try to fix all this stuff at once. Pick one team or one friendly sales team or one friendly sales person and try to actually operate a little bit differently. The other thing, if there is a product management team in place, it's kind of your fault at some level if you have not been successful at getting sales to operate differently. And one of the biggest issues is often you have not productized what they can sell. So you've not been clear of what the boundaries are and the pricing and made that so super simple they feel confident. If I sell this, it's going to happen. So if you solve that, you basically substitute out this laundry list of things that I wish I had with something that they know with confidence they can sell, and you can achieve the success solving the problem that way by proactively telling them and getting them excited about what they can sell, not just limiting what they can't sell, but like actually productizing. And there's a real art to that too, which we don't have time to get to.
I think you can use a lot of data to validate your actions as well. And at the end of the day, if you're showing that your data brings more value to the product, then you can't really bring any other counter argument.
Yeah, Maha, it's a very good point. Like data is context, and you're often, because you're actually not, you don't have authority as a product manager, you only have influence. It's one of your biggest tools is strong data, right? So don't forget that. Like always bringing that. Now, the one thing I will say with that is that you often will get, we know, but we're going to do it just this one more time, because there's a big price tag, a big revenue jump associated with it. So we're just going to do it again, just this once more. And you're like, okay, well, so the really hard part, and you've got there, is when you're actually starting to say no to revenue. And the best data you can have there really is unit economics, and show that it's not going to make a profit. Like it's going to burn, a whole bunch of your team. You might be a good deal, but it's not a strategic investment because it's not going to actually help you create a product you can sell again, and it's going to just cost a lot to support or build and support. And that's where you show just through financial. That's where you also go and talk to your finance person and get them on side, because they'll then say no to sales as well.
Yeah, that's very insightful. Stefan, should we take another one last question and then call it a night?
Ken, your vote.
Yeah, go for it. Let's do it. I'm
Alright.
enjoying this. If you're enjoying this, it's
I feel we
obviously.
could keep it for hours. Keep it going for hours.
Well, I'm thrilled that you've had such a great turnout to the talk. So I'm really, really, really thrilled. I hope a lot of people are getting a lot out of it.
Yeah. So okay. So do you have something on your mind, Mihai?
I'm not sure. I'm between Alexandru with Apple case and Tudor with the KPIs.
All right.
Ooh, sounds interesting.
KPIs.
Do you want to hit me with a question? Anyone will do.
Okay, so I will. I mean, the one with the Apple, it's quite interesting. So yeah, should we deep dive into that one?
Okay, so the question is this. I think we can. Oh, right, you can put it on screen. Right. I heard that Apple has a peculiar product management procedure. Product is owned by engineering, from what I understand. How does that work?
I am not going to be in a position to be able to talk to that simply because I don't know enough to do it justice, and I would hate to say something that's incorrect. So I'm going to probably say no. I don't understand. I don't know their procedure. It is true to say that Google, Facebook, Apple, some of these bigger companies tend to, Ericsson, companies in these larger companies will tend to craft their own version of product management and follow their own procedures. And these have been homegrown but optimized for their particular business and the context and their culture. And so it's not unusual to have that particular type of product manager. And by the way, it's very hard to then generalize that to other companies because you literally can just have a different org structure or culture and it won't work where it was. So all I can say is whatever they use works for Apple.
Right.
And probably only in the Apple context.
Got it. All right. Okay, so now we have like multiple questions coming in, but I think we should call it today. I don't know.
I'm good if you want to ask one more. Otherwise, we can wrap up. No problem.
All right, let's pick Milena. Milena has a question that just popped in. When mature products become too complex, difficult to maintain or continue to build upon, what's the best way to approach a rewrite or cut off some of the excess?
Yep. A wonderful question, Milena, because an art science of product management that is done poorly and done rarely is, first of all, is figuring out how to manage a product that is mature and reaching its end of life, and being really good at that. Now, there are two aspects to this question that strike me. One is that we could answer this question around what it takes to end of life a product that's kind of become a legacy product that's too difficult to sort of maintain. The unit economics are probably not working out anymore. There's customers on it, but maybe they're declining and churning. That's one way. And then there's this word rewrite there that I'll answer probably first quickly. Because that implies that you want to invest in the product again and get it back on track and sort of basically replace whatever legacy with a version 2.0 is, I guess. So the best way to approach a rewrite is to avoid it in the first place. And that requires respecting technical debt and listening to your engineering counterpart when they say they are accumulating technical debt. You do not want, you want to avoid a rewrite by constantly touching and modernizing the product. That includes replacing infrastructure components that are no longer being supported with the most modern, which requires sometimes just purely engineering rewrite. But the idea is you do this on elements and components. You don't stop and say, I got to rewrite the whole business. It does happen. I've run into it twice in my life, and it's not fun, because essentially the only way to really do a rewrite and to maintain an existing product is to have them side by side, and that requires 2x the engineers. So try to avoid it as long as possible by constantly respecting the need to invest in the underlying infrastructure and technical debt removal, and advocate and push on their behalf, because they may not be doing it very well, but push your stakeholders on their behalf that it's so important that you maintain a healthy stack, if you will. I'll put that aside because there are, there's lots more that we can talk about there. Then in terms of like thinking about a complex, difficult to maintain, continue to build upon product, you may actually be faced with a product that needs to be end of life. And that requires this particular type of product management where you're basically trying to get your product into a status of a cash cow, where it's effectively funding other parts of the business. You need to be okay as a product manager to think about, I am not, just because there's lots of revenue coming from this product, that's not justification for me to say we need to spend all that revenue on continuing to build or even rebuild the product. It may be that your best way to help your company be successful is to do as little investment on your product as possible to maintain it while freeing up cash for the rest of the business. And that requires a very mature product manager, because you're always going to be able to justify, you're in a position where you're probably always going to be able to justify, oh, there's 80% of the revenue is coming from this product, or 50% of the revenue is coming from this product. We need to be spending more on my product. That's not justification. The revenue coming in should be spent on a portfolio, including trying out new products that don't exist yet. And it's unfair to have them have the same level of invest. It's unfair to say they have zero investment just because they don't have any revenue and you do. So that's the first thing. And then the key is you want to make sure you're keeping your customers happy. Minimizing churn is often a key thing there, but it requires very judiciously saying no to a lot of things, so you're not having to build one-off features or complex things on top of a stack that no longer really supports it. So it really happens up in the prioritization and adding just those things that are really going to truly delight and keep your existing customers happy, and continue to harvest that product for as long as possible. A good way of thinking about your key metric is, how long can I keep that product in service with as little money as possible while still serving customers' needs? So it's you're managing for longevity, kind of is the key. Now, I may not have answered your question directly. I kind of saw two aspects to it, so I tried to cover both.
Great, that was great. Right. Well,
Great.
Thank you so much, Ken, for your time and your presence.
Not at all.
We should definitely do this again at some point.
Would love to. Would love to. And
yeah.
I'd just love to say that it's a great pleasure to be able to engage with like the product function or product communities is the word I'm struggling for, all around the world. Like, it's really just great to see the profession and how it's evolved and how we actually really do come together. And I, excuse the plug again. I did write the influential product manager for us all to be very bit more successful. I really wanted to share what I've learned, and I'd love it if you could pick up a copy and give me some feedback. There's a link there on the US Amazon, but it is available everywhere, and it's also available in electronic PDF and ebook format, so you don't have to. There's even an audio book, would you believe? I did not. I was not the person speaking, so you're not going to hear me all the way through. You don't want that. But
is that good?
maybe not. I think there are professional people who know how to keep an audio book engaging. So please do, if you have an opportunity, pick up a copy. Give me your feedback. I'm always interested in learning from you too. Right.
Don't forget to add Ken on LinkedIn. He's also always available there. That's how we found him. He was super open. He was super eager to talk to us today. Thank you so much again, and thank you to everybody that joined us today, and obviously the organizers of the chapters that joined us. Wish you a good night, and see you next time.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Everyone.
Bye again. Bye.
Bye.
Take care. See ya.